Hello everyone, my name is Mari. I'm a CELTA trainer assessor. Welcome to Gallery Teachers. Today, our topic is how do we function? And functions became very popular in the 1970s. We had spent a lot of time focusing on grammatical structures, and people said, well, that's not really what we use language for. So let's look at some other ways that we use language, and functions became the topic of the day. So we're going to look at functions. What is a function? We'll look at key things to think about when you're teaching functions. And we'll look at ways of dealing with functions. And we'll draw some conclusions from what we've discussed. So what is a language function? Well, in simple terms, it's a purpose for which language is used. So, for example, looking at the context on the right, if someone says, I'll always love you, they're making a promise. If they say, I'll give you a hand, it could be an offer of help. I'll tell your mother, a threat. I'll tell your mother. You'll hurt yourself, a warning. Small child perhaps balancing along a wall. Parents are worried they're going to fall off. You'll hurt yourself. You'll be late. Someone is taking their time to leave the house for an important meeting, and so their spouse or friend says, you better leave now or you'll be late. Prediction. So what you'll notice with all of those is the grammatical structure is the future simple. But that's not really the function, because the meaning changes depending on a variety of different things. So let's look at some of the things that can affect function. Context. The context is above and beyond the main thing that you need to be aware of. So the context in which the exchange takes place. Is it a formal context? Is it an informal context? The speakers within the context, what's the relationship with them? What's the power balance between them? Are they friends? Are they colleagues? Is it a boss and an employee? Is it a child and a parent? All of those are going to determine your choice of function to be used in a specific context. Another thing that will affect the meaning is stress. Which words are emphasized within the exchange, within the exponent that you give? Paralinguistic features, what gestures do you use? What about your facial expression? Very, very important. Register and appropriacy. So the choice of formal versus informal language within the context will affect interactions. And appropriacy, your choice of which language you use with a particular person can determine how your interaction goes with that person. Intonation, where your voice goes up and down, or is it just very, very flat? Again, that can affect the function. And strangely enough, punctuation, and we'll look at that later. The context is important. If you look at the two pictures here, bank robber pointing a gun at a customer or maybe a bank employee who seems to want to raise the alarm. Or we've got a rabid dog and someone's going to try to stroke it. So the two different contexts. So the language they use, the meaning of the language and its use will change according to the context. So the first one, I wouldn't do that if I were you, can be advice. Someone trying to stroke the vicious dog. Ooh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Or it could be a warning. The bank robber with a gun to the bank clerk. Yeah, I wouldn't do that if I were you. So he's going to possibly shoot him if he tries to touch the alarm. Okay, so we've got context, but pronunciation, stress, and intonation can also affect the meaning and use of the language. So, have you got a light? Have you got a light? You could see that the most important word is light. It could be, you got a light, or got a light, or even light. So, if the room is dark and you need a lamp, you might say to someone, oh, have you got a light? Meaning you want a lamp for the room. If you have a cigarette and no matches or lighter, you can say, you got light? So contexts differ, so the meaning differs. So the unmarked version, have you got a light? You can see the stress is on light, and then you have a little flick at the end because it's a yes/no question. But if the stress changes, the meaning can change. So for example, if the person wants to say, no, not a match, a lamp, then they're more likely to say, have you got a light? So they're really going to emphasize the final word. Or if the meaning is not my brother, but you, have you got a light? And if they're a bit more insistent, well, do you have a light or not? Yeah. Have you got a light? Or I only need one, not two. Have you got a light? Or a light? So the meaning is changing according to the stress. And what you'll also notice is there's a little pitch change as well. So, have you got a light? Have you got a light? You got a light? So when the word is stressed, there's a pitch change as well with that. So we can see that context is important, stress is important, intonation is important, that little flick at the end to make the question polite, but also punctuation. Punctuation is very important because we know that punctuation can kill. We've got a comma in the second sentence. So look at the first one. Let's eat grandma. You can see the stress is on grandma. And the second one, let's eat grandma. The stress is on eat. You know? So you've got that pitch change, you've got the emphasis. And it makes such a difference to the meaning. In the first one, you're cannibals. You're going to eat poor old grandmother. And the second one, you're just saying dinner's ready. Here's another context where punctuation is important. One of my students came to me very, very puzzled and said, the bus driver asked me if I was in love this morning. And why did he do that? So I had a little think and thought, right. So did he say this? Are you in love? Or did he say this? Are you in love? Oh. So are you in? Are you on the bus? So this is where, you know, people can misunderstand what people say. These receptive skills come in, because being aware of how the stress and emphasis in sentences goes can make a lot of difference to your understanding of what people say. So we talked about paralinguistic features. Yeah, if you look friendly, you're going to get a better response from people. Yeah, if you look unfriendly, you're going to get quite a negative response from people. But English is a stress-timed language. So what happens is you emphasize those words that carry the meaning, and the other words are kind of squished between the words that carry the meaning. So we have change, 10, euro, possibly note, maybe not, and please. Yeah. Can you change this 10 euro note for me, please? Can you change this 10 euro note for me, please? And you smile and you look friendly. Yeah. But what about this one? Can you change this 10 euro note for me, please? The words are still the same polite words, but with a very serious face and the wrong intonation, you're not going to get a very good response from the person you speak to. That little flick up at the end of the yes/no question on requests can make all the difference to your interaction with other people. That and a smile. Can you change this 10 euro note for me, please? Versus, can you change this 10 euro note for me, please? Which sounds very angry. And sometimes when students are nervous and they're trying to think of the words that they have to say, they're so concentrating on the words that they have to say that they forget about the intonation, the polite forms, and smiling. I also talked about appropriacy. So appropriacy is using the correct function in the correct situation. And sometimes overly polite exponents can come across as very patronizing. Oh, I wonder if you could possibly open this door for me if it's not too much trouble. Can come across as being more impolite than polite because it's too much. Patronizing, maybe sounds a bit sarcastic. Whereas, could you open this door for me, please? Sounds much more polite. And you've got that little flick at the end again, just to show that it's polite. Yeah. Could you open this door for me, please? So when you think you're being polite, by overdoing the politeness, you can be impolite. So choosing the wrong register can also be rude and overly familiar. So the shop assistant to an elderly lady, can I help you, darling? Versus, how can I help you, madam? Or, can I help you, madam? This is an elderly lady. She's used to be spoken to with a certain amount of respect. And darling is far, far too familiar. Now, the shop assistant might think they're being friendly, but in actual fact, they're being very rude. And so it's important to know what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. Otherwise, your interaction with people will break down. So what you'll also notice with function is often the longer the utterance, the more polite it is. And the shorter the utterance, the more informal it is, or the less polite. So you can often get students to organize the exponents into a climb from informal to formal. So the most informal one would be the shortest, and the most formal one would be the longest. So, please accept my apologies. I really must apologize. I'm most terribly sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Soz. And the most recent one that I've heard being used is "my bad." So the very, very informal, a little bit slang, but that's what a lot of young people are using now. "My bad," meaning I'm sorry, it's my fault. So you notice that when these apologies are made, certain words are emphasized. So please accept my apologies, or I really must apologize. I'm most terribly sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, soz. Yeah. So the other thing we have to consider is how you highlight the form. So very often with grammatical structures, you go through, subject, verb, object, or subject, auxiliary verb, past participle, or so on. But with functions, you don't want to break them down to that extent. So think about which bit stays the same and which bit changes. Yeah. So have you considered stays the same plus verb plus ing. Or I suggest stays the same plus verb plus ing. Why don't we? Plus base form. What about plus verb plus ing, or try plus noun, or try plus verb plus ing? So it's useful to focus on which bits stay the same and which bits change. And you can do nice matching activities where you have sentences with the first half of the function and the end of the function, so that they can show that which ones match with which functions. So to sum, how can you help learners? Make sure you establish the context fully. That's very, very important. Clarify the use. So get them to match the exponents to the uses. Order the exponents under the uses. Clarify the degree of formality, informality with a Klein. Get them to put them in order from informal to formal. Highlight the form, making sure that you emphasize which bit stays the same and which bit changes. Clarify the pronunciation and give practice using paralinguistic features. A word like yes can have so many different meanings. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Yes, I'm not 100% in agreement. Or yes, with a punch in the air, fist punch in the air. Yes, I'm celebrating my success. My team won. So you can practice playing with just one word, for your intonation and paralinguistic features. Yeah. Yes, I agree. Yes. So facial expression as well. Give control practice of form by unjumbling sentences, matching sentence halves, or gap fills. One app that I use is WordWall. So let me show you how the WordWall game works. So you have a function, you jumble up the words, and the students have to put them in order. So here we are. If you get it wrong, it won't do what you want, really. But it goes red if you got it right. Oh no, I've got that wrong. That's not right. And put the words in order. So they now have to find that it's the preposition about that comes after complain, and put the words into the correct order. When you've got it right, you get a tick, and then you can move on to the next one. Students quite enjoy it, and it's a good way to get them to practice on the word order of functions. You can also do matching games and lots of other things with word wall. Give plenty of practice using different situations. That's really important. So employer, employee, colleagues, mother, child, husband, wife, young friends, older friends. Make sure the contexts are clear to the people as well for the situations. And role play, little role cards so people know who they are and what the dynamic is, and then they practice their dialogues with the role cards. Oh, cultural issues. Very, very important to think about. Yeah, the use of please in English. When I went to Spain, I was always sort of like picked out as a Brit because I always put por favor at the end of everything. Yeah, in Spanish, people don't say please, and so that's just a very English thing. Spanish people say give me, dame. Whereas in England, if you went into a shop and said, give me, then you would get a very poor reception, really, because it's not very polite. Yeah. Could I have, please? Safety as well. So teach neutral exponents. Can you tell me rather than could you possibly tell me? Or tell me, which is more like an order. When you're teaching function, in order to establish the context, because as I said, context is key. It's very important to establish the context, the interlocutors in the context, and what the power balance is between them. So use video, images to establish the context. Who's talking to whom? Where are they? And use a video to establish paralinguistic features as well. You get the students to note the facial expressions, the gestures, and so on that go with the exponents. It's all very well to apologize, but if you don't look apologetic, then it's not going to be very helpful. Or if you're expressing interest, but you don't look very interested, it's not really going to help very much either. And deal with levels of formality. So order degrees of formality and informality, model and drill, give roles, as we said, child, adult, friend, stranger, employee, boss, role play, and write dialogues. Yeah. So lots of things that you can do to make teaching functions more fun. Another thing I do is I ask them to say the words in a whisper, or to sing the words, or shout the words. Or if you want to practice intonation, sometimes you can hum the intonation and they have to copy it. Can I help you? You go, can I help you? And they have to copy that intonation. You could do a whole dialogue just with the intonation to make it a bit more fun.